Welcome to the Half Yard Line. I am Tim.
And I'm Luke.
And Luke, we have decided, dear listener, this is breaking news for the listening community. I don't actually think Luke knows this yet, but we have made the collective decision at the Half Yard Line to cease discussions about football and start talking about literally anything else. Because as Titan and Steeler fans, there is no longer football about which to talk. We start this podcast, Luke, about a year and a half ago, beginning of last season, roughly. High hopes for both of our teams.
Salad days, Tim, we think of them now, really.
Yeah, you guys had just had several playoff runs in a row. You start the season, 7-2, everything's fine. The Steelers, rookie quarterback coming in, supposed to change the world. Matt Canada's offense finally going to be unfurled.
Finally got the guy you need to run the offense he wants to run, was always what was said, man.
Right? And now, so the Steelers are setting records for being abysmal, and the Titans are somehow worse. Is it fair to say worse?
Yeah, Titans have been
as bad.
Titans have been eliminated from playoff contention, Tim, as of this weekend. So, in some ways, actually, almost more of a euthanasia situation, I would say.
Right?
Than,
the Steelers theoretically still have hope. Oh,
yeah. You are in the hunt, as I believe the official, NFL media description is.
How do they decide on those things, by the way? Like somebody's graphic one time said in the hunt, and everybody's like, that's the one.
I guess so. They just liked the phrasing, I suppose. The Rich Eisen show on whatever the hell network it's on now, they used to say sniffing it was their preferred thing, which I didn't mind.
I like Rich Eisen.
Yeah, me too. So they were saying, they're sniffing it because they're not, I guess teams that are in the hunt are not really in the hunt because the hunt implies, they're in the playoffs, I guess. I don't really know who came up with it.
You're hunting for the player near the playoffs.
I guess. It's a bit forced.
You
but
haven't
it's obviously
shot the deer yet, but you're in the hunt.
It's become the preferred terminology. So we haven't come up with one, as you can tell.
Not quite in the books, but
maybe we should come up with one for the end of the season. One that we can use to not describe either of the teams that we follow.
Football. So we were thinking today we would focus on holiday songs. No, I kid. We are going to talk.
We're going to microanalyze each of the 12 days of Christmas and understand who on God's green earth is sending 8 maids of milking to someone's house. That's a big question.
The real question is, if you sing the song, this is a debate among people. You sing the first day 12 times, the second day 11 times, the third day 10 times, and so on, because you got to come back all the way through. And so the question is, is it on the 12th day, are you giving all 12 things again?
Oh, interesting. I mean,
and so have you given one partridge in a pear tree or 12 partridges in a pear tree? And it matters a lot more when you get to 8 maids of milking, because you're either giving 8 maids of milking or you're giving 40 maids of milking, which is a lot of maids milking.
I'm not going to lie to you, Tim. It's not something I've put a huge amount of thought into in my 34 and a bit years on this earth. However, given that football has betrayed me, maybe I'll start pouring some resources into Christmas Carol analysis.
That. And in the meantime, I'll tell the folks where to find us on the socials. So social media at Half Yard Line Pod. At Half Yard Line Pod, that is our handle. That is the at thing with the name to find us on the thing. We're on all the things. We're on the threads. We are on
threads.
X. We're on.
We are on X. We should probably clarify. X is Twitter, just to be because no one calls it X.
No, can you go to x.com and find it, or do you still just have to go to twitter.com and they pretend it's called X?
I'll be honest, Tim, I'm very fearful of typing x.com into my browser to see what would show up.
I got you.
But twitter.com still redirects to X. But yes, to your point, we are on there.
X.com in day, it just redirects to Twitter. So there you go.
Oh, nice one. But yes, we are on all the things. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok.
We're not on the Snapchat, though, right? No Snapchat.
No, we're not on Snapchat, no. I used Snapchat for about 6 months once, and in my old man brain just couldn't handle it.
It's to send messages their parents can't read later, right?
I have no idea. Snapchat? But we are on that. We're also on YouTube, so find us on YouTube if you're on YouTube now.
If you're watching, hi.
And you can find us there at Half Yard Line Pod, halfyardlinepod@gmail.com for the literary amongst you who want to send us an electronic mail. We don't yet have a postal address. So unfortunately, in this season of Christmas cards, I received Tim's family Christmas card today with much enjoyment. And we don't yet have that address for you fine folks out there to send us written correspondence, but maybe someday.
The moment I get one electronic communication requesting one, I will set up a P.O. box for the Half Yard Line, but not until then.
but not until then. Anyway, we're going to spend today, as Tim said, talking about anything except Titans and Steelers football. So yes, help us, it's been a painful couple of weeks there in the Steel City, and it's not been that great in the Music City either as of the last several days.
You had a fun 2 minutes of football.
We had a great 2 minutes of football.
The last 2 minutes against Miami were a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a reason we spent 15 minutes covering it, but then little did I know that was going to be the end of the fun. So we're not going to talk about those teams, but we are going to talk about some of the kind of notable, interesting games later in the season, some amongst good teams, some amongst not so good teams. Talk about each of 4 games. Chargers, Raiders. We're going to talk about Bills and Cowboys. We're going to talk about Bengals, Vikings, or Bengals,
those
Vikings,
Viking Bengals,
those damn Vikings, Vikings-Bengals, and we're going to talk about Bears-Browns. Those two in a little combo platter because they had ridiculous finishes to those games. We spoke, Tim, early in the season about kind of blowouts. We spoke earlier in the season about how to lose a football game, and we thought, hey, the NFL season will start to even out a little bit more as it goes along, right? It was very scrappy. First month, 2 months was very uneven play across the league, a lot of penalties, a lot of errors, a lot of poor play. And we thought that would change. Mm-hmm. The reality is it has not really changed. This is a low-grade NFL season from on-field play quality, and I think the good teams, even the ones who are in playoff contention or in the hunt, are not particularly good, or at least are extremely flawed in some way. This weekend kind of bore that out, and I mentioned the games we're going to touch on. I just wanted to kind of make an overall point and see if you agreed with me on it.
Probably.
It felt a lot watching football this weekend like I was watching college games. And what I'll say by that is kind of twofold. Number one, you had these kind of unbelievably lopsided wins, right? 2 of which we're going to talk about in detail in a sec, where one team just blew the doors off the other. One team couldn't stop making mistakes. The other team kept scoring touchdowns, or, the line of scrimmage battle was completely one-sided, like an athletic mismatch. And then you had other games where the quality of play wasn't particularly high. A lot of like weird interceptions, guys fumbling the ball when they shouldn't be, that kind of stuff, followed by kind of crazy endings where wild stuff happens. Now, both of those, neither of us are as big college watchers as we are pro watchers, but both of those struck me as fairly collegiate in terms of themes, right? You have these great banner games in the college ranks, which are basically defined by the end. The last 2 minutes is like someone blocks a punt or someone returns a kickoff 106 yards.
Who scores
and then you
last?
Right, and then you also have the Alabamas playing, Northwestern Dakota State or whatever, and they beat them 100-0, and no one cares. And I actually felt watching the games, and all 4 of the ones we're going to talk about fall into one of those 2 buckets, that there was a collegiate kind of lack of preciseness or precision in the games. And I think it was characterized by quite a few plays this weekend of guys literally running down the field with no one standing around them and no one chasing them, and then them scoring touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey was so open on a kind of broken play that he fell down, stood up, and ran it in from 20 yards out. No one touched him. Cooper Kupp ran a go route. No one covered him. He ran in for a touchdown. One of the Chargers receivers, Josh Palmer, ran past the corner, no coverage, touchdown. I know these things happen in the pros, but it feels like those plays were indicative of this kind of league-wide malaise of what I would define as kind of college play. And I don't mean that to sound like a slight, because they're not professionals, so they shouldn't be as good, and they're not. But it had that feel to it this whole weekend. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I do. To me, it's less about overall quality of play as unbalance in quality of play. And that's what you see in college a lot, right? Is there's 5 teams that when they play each other, it's really fun. And when they play anybody else, it's like, well, what are we here for? And in college, now you sometimes you get crazy upsets just like you do in the pros, and App State beats Michigan or whatever.
Right.
But generally speaking, if both teams show up to play and both teams put on their pants and pads, it's going to be, who's going to win. And I think the NFL this season, to me, has been more of that than I think I've ever seen before. And the uncertainty, the crazy wins are bad teams beating other mediocre teams. It's like mediocre beating mediocre, and you thought you knew which one was more mediocre, but like you're not going to bat for anybody. I mean, think about the number of teams that you really can sit here and say, units, let alone position groups. But offense, defense, special teams. How many teams have good both or all three? None. No, I mean, San Francisco.
Yeah.
That right? I mean, Dallas.
We thought maybe, but maybe.
No, the Bills, their defense has at times shown up, but their defense has not been spectacular, and their offense has been much poorer than it has in previous years.
Yeah.
Eagles'
Kansas defense has been bad.
Yeah, Kansas City's blowing nobody up. So you look around, you go, who's really good in all three phases consistently? And, used to, over the last several years, which I will speak with authority, I think back in the day when I was a boy, but there were several teams you look at and you go, this is a complete football team. They have a chance to win a Super Bowl. Doesn't mean they were going to win the Super Bowl because you expected there were a couple of other teams that were also complete. And what I think it's come down to, and I texted you about this a little behind the scenes earlier in the week, is I don't think the guys are learning to play fundamental football particularly well. What football has evolved to a game played among incredibly athletic men who may or may not pay much attention to the details. It's certainly what's happening in Steelers land right now, but I think it happened. You look at some of the penalties and they annoy the snot out of me. Procedural penalties, offensive offsides, even defensive, it's just stupid. Ineligible receiver 3 yards downfield, they annoy the crap out of me. But at the same time, these guys get paid millions of dollars to play a game. It is in their interest to know the rules and follow them. And, everybody saw the play with Kansas City last week, or, Kelsey throws the thing back and blah, 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 and he's on offensive offsides. And you're like, well, it's a stupid penalty. It didn't affect the play. That's exactly how I felt about it. But he doesn't know that his foot's across the ball. Of course he does. He either wasn't paying attention or he didn't care. Neither of those things is showing that disciplined, fundamental football. And you think about the coaches out there who are struggling right now, Mike Vrabel, Mike Tomlin, Bill Belichick. And there's several of these guys you can go back over the last 5 years who kind of lost their jobs after being these hard-nosed disciplinarian, my way or the highway, in favor of these more player-friendly coaches. And the coaches that are being super successful right now, Mike McDaniel, Sean McVay, Andy Reid, they're super player friendly.
Kyle Shanahan. Yep.
They're super creative. They come up with fun plays, fun ways to run the offense, interesting things. Now, I exclude Shanahan from that because I think those are all true about Shanahan, but he's also heavily detail oriented.
That's true.
You're going to be on your spot on time, or you're not going to be on the field. And that's one of the things that organization has been able to do that blows my mind, is they've been able to put players on the field who are both incredibly talented and athletic, but willing to put in the work. Christian McCaffrey is never not where Christian McCaffrey's supposed to be. Never. And he's athletic enough, it doesn't matter. But he's never not where he's supposed to be.
Right.
You look at Deebo Samuel is never not where he's supposed to be. You can go down the list of players, the offensive line, the defense. You never find that defense out of position.
Yeah, there's no diva kind of quotient right in that team. Even if you go back to some of the successful teams of yesteryear, you think about the Patriots, right? That was always the Patriot way. What we would call in the UK, and they call it this in New Zealand as well, it's called tall poppy syndrome, right? So if you get too high, the poppy grows too high, it gets cut down. Now it's usually used in a kind of negative way of the national culture is, don't let anyone succeed sort of thing. But it does sort of apply to the Belichicks and the Mike Thomas and Bill Cowers of yesteryear, the Bill Parcells type characters who were like, you are not going to be too big. You get too big, I'm going to cut you down. I'm going to trade you. I'm going to, put you back in your box. I don't care if you're Randy Moss. I don't care if you're Terrell Owens. I don't care if you're Lawrence Taylor. You're going to do your job. Or at least if you're not going to do it, it better work. Otherwise, you're in big trouble with.
Yeah, you got two choices: do your job every time, or be right.
Right. There used to be, there was another soccer manager who used to say he had a no dickheads policy, which is basically which was also basically the same thing. So yeah, I totally agree with you. And in terms of well-rounded football teams, you look around the league and you go, San Francisco is it. San Francisco is well-rounded. San Francisco is good at everything. Beyond that, every team has had at least some kind of wobble where you go, oh, I don't know. I mean, San Francisco's had a wobble earlier this year, but I mean, outside of that 3-game stretch where they went at full strength, your point you make is a great one. Shanahan's offense very precise, timing based, rhythm based. Be where you're supposed to be, or you're in trouble. And he's managed to combine that with elite talent, which is why that team is just so unstoppable right now. So we're not going to talk about the Niners, but I thought it was worth kind of raising that as an overall point across the league, because I do think without us just bemoaning how crap everyone is, it's good to at least give some context as to why we think that might be the case. So moving on, Tim, to two exceptional football teams. Now we get to discuss some high-level football in the form of... it was the Raiders and the Chargers. Sorry, I must have misread what we're talking about. We're going to talk about Chargers-Raiders on Saturday.
First of all, Saturday football. What do you think?
No, I hate Saturday football.
What? Love Saturday football.
I'm very much a person who likes to have things in like boxes that I can just like compartmentalize. Like Sunday is I'm watching football. And then I've obviously, since I've moved here, it used to be Sunday nights, right? Because I was living in the UK. Yep. Since I moved here, okay, now it's Sunday. I have no problem with that. Sunday is my football day. Monday night, fine. Thursday night, mostly fine. You can't keep adding. You just can't keep adding things.
No,
and most of the games, also most of the games on between bad teams because they know people aren't going to watch as many of them, so they tend to like not give as much of a crap about the games that were on. This was entertaining, but it was on Thursday. This was Thursday night, was it not? This was Al and Kirk, I believe.
Yeah, you're right.
So, but you are right about Saturday games. I think I said it was Saturday, which is completely wrong. That's the game we'll talk about later. Thursday. Yeah. So we can get into that later. This was on Thursday night. Apologies, everyone who's screaming into their listening device. This was on Thursday night. Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit finally calling a game with some points in it. Unfortunately, all the points went one way. Was it 63-21 in the end? I think it was this game.
Yeah, 63-21. That's it.
So we've already had a 70-20, and we nearly got there again. And if you told me it was the Las Vegas Raiders in the game, I would have handily bet they were the team scoring 20, not the team scoring 60 plus.
Yep.
A game that spiraled quick. The Raiders were up 7-0 with 8 minutes left in the first quarter. Then they were up 21-0 with 3 minutes left in the first quarter. So it did not take particularly long for this to all go to shit for the Los Angeles Chargers. You want to do a quick drive chart, Tim, just to start as the start of this game. We're fans of a drive chart. Punt, touchdown, fumble, touchdown, fumble, touchdown. You can guess who had the ball first. Not the best. It obviously led to the unceremonious firing of Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco. We don't usually talk about games that are so far in the past on half-yard line, but this is a notable one to the tune of a savage beatdown. I guess I'll give you the floor, Tim. What were your overall thoughts watching this bloodbath transpire last week?
I have lots of thoughts, but I'm going to start with the Raiders are a bad football team. The Raiders just beat somebody 63-21. Now, I do math for a living, but I believe that's a 42-point differential.
It is, Tim.
The Las Vegas Raiders are still 15 points below what they have. They've scored 15 points less than they've allowed. Their differential's in the negatives.
Right.
So they scored 63 points. They have scored on the season 265 points. So if you take their 265 points and you subtract the 63, again, math, not my strong, 202, they have now played 14 games. So it took them 13 games to get 202. That's 15 and a half points a game. Follow me with your math a little. 15 and a half points a game this team has scored. All of a sudden, they play one game against the Los Angeles Chargers, who absolutely chose not to come on Sunday. Their coach didn't show. The team didn't show. There were pictures down that sideline where you just went, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, what? And you took a team who's been scoring 15 points a game and allowing 22, for the record. 15 points a game, and you let them score 63?
Yeah. Even more funny because the week before they scored 3 and they won. So, Tim, listen, you say 15 points a game. That's 66 points in 2 games. So, it's all looking rosy, right? In the out there in the desert.
They've got it turned around. I guess they lost, by the way. That was a 3-0 loss to the Vikings.
Oh, it was the 3. Sorry, they lost 3-0. That was it. Yeah. So still 63 points in 2 games. It's pretty good.
63 points in 2 games.
Yeah, your point is right, though. I mean, the Chargers, there were some no-shows this weekend. the Chargers got in early on this particular front. And it's a very short. It's also a very short journey, so you haven't even got that to fall back on. Like a short week, we had to travel. No, you didn't have to travel that far.
Could have driven
about midway from the second quarter onwards, when the game was over. Let's be honest. You really started to see some guys who were not interested in playing football. Right, like we're not going to do the armchair sports psychology, sports people psychology stuff that the sports talk guys do, but. Guys were kind of staying on blocks. There was not much pursuit. There was not a lot of very good tackling on the defensive side. But you sent me. Oh yeah, go on.
The Las Vegas Raiders scored 42 points in the first half and punted twice.
That's great.
What?
That's probably one of my favorite statistics. They had 8 possessions in the first half. Just for reference, in the entirety of Dallas and Buffalo, there were 17 possessions between both teams. So they had 8.
There are many games you don't get 8 possessions in the game. They had 8 in the half, scored 42 points, and punted twice.
And what's even crazier about that is, you would think if you just said they scored 42 points in the first half, and you say, well, they scored 63 points and they scored 2 defensive touchdowns, you'd say, okay, I can believe that. But the fact is they didn't score the defensive touchdowns until the second half. So the game was already over. You've somehow got 6 touchdown drives and 2 punts. It was remarkable. I'm not, there will always be another game where things have happened because there's so many games played. But that was a first for me. I don't think I've seen that happen before. Even the Dolphins, they at least just scored a touchdown every time they touched the ball. I mean, that's fine. I can understand that easier than I can. You had 8 possessions in the first half and you punted 2 of them away and you scored 6 touchdowns. Just remarkable.
It's unbelievable. It really is. And it was one of those games, we talked about earlier, how do you have a blowout, right? There is the series of unfortunate events blowout. There's the didn't show up this week blowout. And there's the I got here and it just got off the rails early and we never got on, right? The Giants 40-0 beat down in week 1. And this was like all of those. They didn't show up. And then there was a series of unfortunate events in the second half, but they never got going. The only thing you can't say is there were bad conditions, right? Like they play inside and it was in Las Vegas. It was 72 degrees outside and perfect inside. You look at the game and you really have to ask yourselves how you're talking about embarrassing. And I am not normally a fan of firing the coach mid-year. I mean, even Canada, who I've been trying to get rid of forever, I'm like, we picked now? Why now of all the times? And by the way, since we fired him, we scored 13 points every game except one. We've only scored more than 13 points one time, and that was we scored 18. We get beat by New England. So it's not working. But I generally think, look, fire the coach in the offseason, figure it out. But there's got to be some reason to keep the guy around. And clearly nobody on the sideline is listening to this guy. Like, he's lost the locker room.
Yeah.
Because when you get beat like this, it's I don't know. It's hard to understand. But there are 53 guys on each sideline. Both of these teams are unsuccessful franchises right now.
They're lost seasons for both teams.
Yeah. The Chargers, you have a lot of talent on their roster. The Raiders have some talent on their roster, but neither team has been putting it together. It's not like Vegas has had a couple of bad weeks and here they're coming roaring back. Yeah, this is completely out of character.
Well, the worst thing. Go on.
Sorry. No, I was just saying, to give up those kind of points to a team that's not. The Dolphins are a great offense.
Right.
Giving up 70 to the Dolphins, like, you feel bad about it. And you go, we're professionals. We shouldn't do. But at the end of the day, you're like, Tyreek Hill got it crazy and Jalen Waddle got crazy and then got away from us in the second half. How do you, to the Raiders? And when it's 42-0 at the half, you go in. You got two choices, right? I mean, this is the old, do you almost wish you could just wave your hand and go, you know what, we're good.
For sure. And the other thing about the difference between this and the Dolphins-Broncos game, the Raiders are not even playing with their starting quarterback. Now, you can take whatever opinion you want about Jimmy Garoppolo, right? You can say he's better than people say, worse than people say about, right? It's not relevant.
Yeah, no, they had Neil O'Donnell out there. O'Connell. Sorry, my bad. O'Connell.
The second most famous AOC in North America, under center for the Silver and Black. And yeah, he's fine. Like, he was a late round rookie quarterback Sure, like you say, they have some talent. Josh Jacobs didn't even play in this game, by the way, so they've got backup running back. Sure, you got Devontae Adams. You're getting touchdowns from Trey Tucker. They're running trick plays with Jacoby Myers. It was just like a complete mollywhopping across the board. So, yeah, you can look at the Chargers and say, yeah, Justin Herbert's out. Keenan Allen was out. Eckler's missed some games. Mike Williams out for the season. All of those things are completely true. But you weren't going up against the juggernaut, right? You were going up against a team who's almost in the same position you are. And you play them in twice a year because they're in the same division as you.
They had the same record going into the game.
Right. And by the way, this team fired their coach about a month and a half ago. They fired all their offensive staff and the head coach, and the quarterback's injured. And I think he was a 6th round rookie, Aiden O'Connell. So you really don't have any excuse for giving up that many points. I get Easton Stick is also a rookie. I think he's in his 2nd year actually, but he's not really played any football. I totally understand that, but there's no excuse to your point for getting beaten that badly. Certainly not by a team who basically is the same as you on paper and is going to finish with a similar record in the same division. So it kind of leads us on to the secondary point, which I wanted to touch on, which was obviously the consequence of this game, right? The Staley and Telesco firing. I'll give my kind of 2 cents on it, and you can maybe tell me if you disagree too. I mean, there's 2 parts to this when you see a GM and a coach fired at the same time. There's the how is the roster, and then there's how is the roster performing. And I think this is a unique case, certainly one that I struggled to think of another example where I thought the roster is actually quite good on paper, but it's also very flawed. But even with the good roster or the good parts of the roster, you're still failing. So everyone just kind of carries the can for this failure. If you look on paper at this team and the players, just player for player that the Chargers have, forget injuries, I'll get to that in a second. Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Rashawn Slater, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Derwin James, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. Like, these are players that people know. This isn't like rando 3rd round picks who have come good that no one outside the organization or fan base has ever heard of. This is like name brand star players, right?
Yeah.
Now, Telesco has obviously accrued quite a lot of talent. Now, he's had some pretty bad misses. You think about the J.C. Jackson contract last year, $82 million 5-year contract, basically lasted 1 year, turfed out the door. Quentin Johnston was the 1st-round draft pick this year, has given them basically zilch. Even with Mike Williams going out for the year, where you thought maybe he could do something, he's really given them nothing.
As a fantasy owner, I can tell you not what we hoped.
And he's a rookie, and we're not going to throw him in the bin after 2/3 of a bad season on a pretty bad team. But Tom Telesco's accrued a lot of talented players. Now, the contracts they've given out have been problematic and have not given them value for money. And the second thing is all the players that I just listed have had injury problems of some kind, long-term or short-term, across their careers. Herbert has missed a bunch of games. Eckler missed a bunch of games this year. Slater missed some games. Williams out for the season, had injury problems before. Keenan Allen's had 3, I think, ACL or MCL tears in his career, and he's been fairly durable since, but he's had injuries in his background. Joey Bosa missed a lot of football. Derwin James has missed a lot of football. So you've got all these great players, and I'm sure they're a great Madden team, but at some point you do have to maybe think about how you approach either how you train, how you prep these guys in the preseason, the off season, or you have to start looking at players who have got different, physical dimensions, different backgrounds, different records of availability. Because if you have a lot of players who are, and I don't like this term particularly because a lot of it's luck, but quote, injury prone, unquote, they are going to get injured. And you do have to have some ability to overcome that or create enough of an environment that you can weather the storm of guys being hurt. But when they're all of your stars, very, very hard to do that. So I think that's one issue with Telesco. The second thing I'd say on his front is he also has to look, you have to look at his performance as the GM across his entire tenure, which is 11 years, which is quite a long time. He's hired 3 coaches, Mike McCoy, Anthony Lynn, Brandon Staley. In the entire time he was the GM, they won 2 playoff games. They haven't won the division a single time. And then, so when you look at it across the entire portfolio of his performance, you do have to think franchise-wide. You go a decade with 2 playoff wins when every year people have said you've got talent. Every year people have said you should be better and you're not. Something is wrong in the building. You're hiring the wrong coach. You're not doing the right things in the draft, whatever the case may be. On the Staley front, after they threw the game against Jacksonville in the postseason last year, a lot of people said that he should be fired straight from that, which could have been an overreaction, could not. seems like maybe it would have helped them if they got it out the way earlier. Might have been good for Telesco's job security, but different conversation. You can't go into a game against a division opponent and lose like this and not get fired unless you have great job security. I mean, it's the most points the Raiders have ever scored in a game in the history of the team. Yeah. So that's one part. It's the cherry on top of the kind of shit Sunday, if you will. I don't know what the cherry on a shit Sunday is. I don't really want to find out.
Nope.
But Brandon Staley is also a defensive head coach. And they're allowing the 6th most points per game in the league. And they're allowing the 4th most yards per game. So ultimately, where are you hanging your hat on Brandon Staley as a head coach? That was a bit of a treatise, but that was kind of my thoughts across Telesco and Staley. So I do think both of them bear responsibility for the situation. And I kind of feel like a general house cleaning probably makes more sense than just say, well, we'll let Tom Telesco hire another coach, given that he's hired 3 and we've now fired all 3 of them.
All right. So a lot there. Let me give me the 30-second version on each of your points. So as it relates to Staley, frankly, I think sometimes we have too much of a recency bias in sport. It all depends in my mind on what you think about injuries. Now, you and I have had many conversations about football where we said injuries drive seasons. If you're the Titans in the
last
3
year,
years, the 3 years they were good, the Titans had some of the worst injury luck in football. And it's a big reason why the arc was shallower than it might have been. Last year, the team was good for the first 9 weeks. Injuries, team was bad the last 8 weeks. Like injuries drive outcomes. Now, if you are one that believes, and I'm not saying this is true or false, but if you're one that believes your conditioning program, your training program will compel more injuries or fewer injuries, and you have some amount of control over whether it's Tom Brady and pliability or whether it's avoiding soft tissue injuries or hamstrings or getting the right amount of work but not too much work. And there's all of this kinesiology and the studies that go into the movement of the body and the muscles and the bones and how do we get these guys in peak form without getting them past peak form into the place that they're going to be unhealthy or uncomfortable or more prone to injury. And there's science to that and there's art to that. I presume the Chargers have a team of doctors and physiotherapists and all these other things to help make those decisions. Now, if Staley's walking in the room and going, it's all ridiculous, get out here and play, then he bears responsibility for that. I don't blame him because Mike Williams can't stay on the field. I don't blame him because some of these guys can't stay on the field. Now, this team, right, last year, what was their record last year, Luke? Do you remember?
I think they were 10-7, I want to say, or 9-8.
Yeah, they were a playoff team, right? So let's just say that first. They were 9-8 or 10. I think they were 10-7 is what I had them at in my head. But let me just they won 10 wins. 10 wins last year, 9 wins the year before that. All right. So this is a team that is 500 under this coach. He's had 3 years. In those 3 years, he went to the playoffs once. He should have won a playoff game. Got away from him at the end. A lot of coaches have had crazy things happen at the end of the game. To me, it wasn't as bad as 28-3 in the Super Bowl. All right.
No, definitely not.
So, like, you got a 9-win team, a 10-win team, and then a 5-win team that looks embarrassing. And listen, the way they played was completely inexplicable. But coming from a franchise who doesn't fire their coach ever, I do think that this might have been a bit of an overreaction, even for Staley. People wanted to fire him last year after a playoff game gone awry, after the guy had gone 9-8 in his first year, 10-7 in his second year, and made the playoffs. Like, you're on the trajectory. Now, I'm not sure how much he felt like the organization was committed to him. Does he make decisions differently this year if the owner comes out and Spanos comes out and he goes, hey, listen, this guy went 9-8 in his first year. He went 10-7 in his second year. Find me a bunch of coaches out there who are performing better. He's our guy. He's going to be our guy, and we're going to stick with him. And then you start running into the injury bug again this year. You're a little underperforming. You come out and go, look, not the year we expect to have. This is unacceptable. But Staley, 9-7 2 years ago, or 9-8, 10-7 last year, made the playoffs, has bought himself one bad year. And as it relates to the GM, I don't understand how we can play it both ways and say, well, Staley's not been able to get anything out of this talented roster he's had created for him, and then say the GM's got to go because he can't build a talented roster. And it comes down to, what do you think the most important thing about a GM is? Because you highlighted the only reason you fire this guy with the head coach is because you don't want him to pick your next head coach. And fine, I get that. That's a fair, but it's also fair to walk in and go, hey, Tom, look, seem pretty good at putting together a roster. We've had some challenges hiring coaches. Let's have a committee. Let's bring in some consultants. If my boss came into my office and said, hey, Tim, really good on this, and this, had a little bit of problems with this, so we're going to fire you. It's nonsensical. You would walk into my office, you go, hey, Tim, really good with this, and this. Worried about this piece over here. So we're going to get you some help. We're going to hire another this, that, or the other thing. We're going to get you some training. We're going to, whatever it is.
Right.
But if the only real strike on Telesco, in my view, unless you want to blame the injuries on him, is he can't hire coaches. And that's if you don't think Staley was a good coach. And I'm not ready to sign off on that yet. So in my mind, this is yet another example of a franchise who spent the last 30 years on the edge, right? From back in the Drew Brees days with San Diego. It was...
Yeah, even Dan Fouts, right?
Going to win the Super Bowl next year. Going to win the Super Bowl next year. We're going to win the Super Bowl next year. You had an entire career of Phillip Rivers where he stayed relatively healthy. And that team was good, but they couldn't get it done in the playoffs. And you get this hunger, this desire, this lack of patience. I look back at, and I couch everything in the Steelers because I'm a Steelers fan. But you look back to the Killer Bee era. You had Mike Tomlin, you had Ben Roethlisberger, you had Antonio Brown, you had Le'Veon Bell, you had Martavis Bryant, whatever you think of him, you had Chris Boswell on the kicking. So the offense goal that year was to score 30 points a game. It was a good football team. And they got to the playoffs and they got shellacked by the Jacksonville Jaguars. The only time they ever had a chance to go to it as a group. Should we fire Mike Tomlin? No, we didn't. Now, we haven't won a football game in 7 years. Maybe we should have. But to me, you can have all of the pieces in place. You still have to have it go your way to get that Super Bowl. And right now, I feel like if we don't have, there are not that many teams who have multiple playoffs wins in the last 5 years. They're not. Because there's not that many playoff games to win. And so the expectations that we put on these coaches, and then we just churn through them, and we get no stability, and we got no quarterback success. We got Herbert, great young quarterback, seems to be, who's now going to have another new coach, another new offensive coordinator, another new system. We've broken better players with less. So at what point do you play for stability? At what point do you fire the guys? To clean the whole house after a 5-9 year, we're probably going to finish, I don't know, 6-11, 7-10, something like that.
Yep.
He was probably going to be right around 500 in his career for the team after 3 years. Already time to hit the button. I wouldn't have fired either one of them. I understand why people did. He clearly lost the locker room. Give the guy the rest of the year to say, let's figure this stuff out. But I don't know, man. I think to let go of both of them, to me, is the height of we don't know what we're doing. I'd rather have nobody in here and bring in brand new people than we'll go with any of the people we got. To me, it's a flawed. Name one other organization where they would do that. And I don't mean the football teams. I mean outside of football. You work for a consulting firm. I work for a bank. Nobody at a bank would come in and go, all right, let's fire the CEO, CFO, CRO, and CEO. All of you, bye. Thank you. It's been fun. We'll just go with a new management team. It's nonsense. Nobody on earth would, no matter how bad your team is, you would go through an orderly transition process in management. And why football teams keep doing this and just hoping they're going to roll the dice into a successful pair of GM and coach, to me, is crazy. So that was a lot more than 30 seconds, but that's what I gave you.
No, fair enough. No, I think certainly some interesting points there. And Tim, one of the people who contributed so much to the ouster of Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley, whatever you think of that decision, pro or anti, was this week's Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week, who plays for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Somebody had to get a lot of yards in this game.
Yeah. No, so for those that aren't familiar, or sorry, I'm sure many of you are, Jonas Gray Memorial Player of the Week, given out every week to a kind of no-name NFL player you've never heard of, comes out of the clear blue sky, does something amazing, plays an incredible game, and you think, who the hell is this dude? They're not the high draft picks. They're not the big names. They're not the high-priced free agents. These are the guys who are filling NFL rosters and doing it great, maybe for 1 week, maybe for many. Unlike Jonas Gray, who, of course, ran for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, was never heard from again. We hope all Jonas Gray Memorial Players of the Week go on to great things this season. It's included a kicker. Last week, we've also had a running back who played kicker. Last season, we had this guy called Brock Purdy, who's obviously gone on to do nothing. So clearly, the Jonas Gray Memorial teaspoon is helpful. Tyson Bagent got one this year, so we've had a good spread. But this is I think this is a first in positional ranks for this week, Tim. This week's Jonas Gray Memorial teaspoon
running back
going to John Jenkins, defensive tackle, Las Vegas Raiders. He is a 6'3", 327-pound man.
So small. He's a little
quite
guy.
Yeah. He's quite big. He's in his 11th NFL season. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Didn't know who this guy was until this week, where in the beatdown against the Chargers that ended up with people being fired, he scooped up an Eastern stick fumble and ran it in from 44 yards away for a touchdown. Everyone loves a big man touchdown. Not many things better than a defensive tackle touchdown, and not many things better than the big train going down the tracks. It wasn't like, I fell on the fumble in the end zone, or we ran a trick play at the 1 yard line.
Moving.
This was a 44-yard touchdown return by John Jenkins. It was a rumble. It was definitely a rumble. Yeah, so he's in his 11th NFL season, his 8th team stop. So he was drafted by New Orleans, actually in the 3rd round, so quite highly picked for a Jonas Gray player, but it was in 2013. He's then gone Saints, Seahawks, Bears, Giants, Dolphins, Bears again, Dolphins again. Now he's with the Raiders. So he has bounced around the proverbial
journeyman.
Exactly. He's actually, Tim, interestingly, and what I'm fairly sure is a rarity for NFL players, he's from Connecticut. Hey. So your state of residence. So he was born in Stamford and grew up in a place called Meridian, Connecticut. I don't know if you know where that is.
I do.
Okay, good. Any intel on Meridian? Does it produce a lot of NFL talent that we're not aware of?
No, it does not. I would say Connecticut, not a big football factory.
Yeah. He played defensive end, and he played some fullback at Francis T. Maloney High School in the Meridian area before John Jenkins made his way to community college, truly the path of the Jonas Gray player, right? Like these are guys who overcome obstacles, who have gone the road less traveled.
He went to
Well, funny you should say that. So he went to a community... No, not quite. But he went to a community college called Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College.
Yeah, baby.
Or MGCCC, as I'm sure they don't call themselves, who play in the Mississippi Association of Community Colleges Conference, or MAC, but with 3 Cs. So it's really good. Yes. And that conference includes East Mississippi Community College, who are the featured community college in the original couple of series of Last Chance U. Anyone out there who's never watched Last Chance U, it's a Netflix series about junior college players, absolutely outstanding. Go watch it. Couple seasons in Scuba, Mississippi, which is where East Mississippi Community College is. Couple seasons in Kansas with a guy who turned out to be a complete piece of shit as the coach, but different story. And the basketball series are good too. So free plug, go watch it. Great show. But the Mississippi Gulf Coast Bulldogs, Tim, welcomed John Jenkins into their doors, and he played there for 2 years, including winning the MAC with 3 Cs title in 2010. So put some silverware in the old cupboard down there in Perkinston, Mississippi, which I'm assured is a place that they have a school in. He then earned a scholarship to the University of Georgia, where he played for 2 years as a rotational nose tackle. Given that he's a huge human being, that kind of makes sense. But not the only Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College player to make the pros in recent memory. So 2 guys for you, Tim, little blast from the past. Terrence Cody. Do you remember Terrence Cody? Played for the Ravens. Defensive tackle as well, who was a mammoth human being taken in the 2nd round. Mount Cody, as he was known.
Mount Cody.
And the other one is one for the fantasy football players of a certain vintage out there. Vic Ballard, who played for the Colts for a bit and had a brief
Vic Ballard.
Jonas Gray-esque run where he was like a featured back for like 2 weeks. But anyway, just wanted to give a shout out to the Bulldogs for producing some NFL dudes. But John Jenkins went to the University of Georgia, failed to make it through his first preseason practice because it was so tough, and then had a tough start where he made the team and was then called out for blown assignments in his first 2 games by the coaches. The car alarm you can hear going off is on my street, by the way, if you're wondering, listening at home. He became a nose tackle, as I mentioned, in a rotational mode because nose tackles struggle to play every snap because they're huge. He did go to the combine, ran a 5.2 40 and was 346 pounds. So that's moving for a big fella.
I'm not running a 5.2 40, I'll tell you that.
30 bench presses of 225, if you're wondering. But he's slimmed down since then. And as I mentioned, was drafted in the 3rd round by the Saints, the 82nd pick, the 8th defensive tackle taken in 2013. And looking this up, the 2013 NFL draft team, I'm going to put this out there, might be the worst top 10 ever. I didn't do research into this. The first round in general for the 2013 draft is extremely hit and miss. I think it's generous. But this is the top 10. Are you ready for this?
I can't wait.
Eric Fisher, Chiefs, 1st overall pick. Couple of good years. A lot of meh years. Never really
Not a 1 overall, no.
Jags picking 2nd. Luke Jokel, also offensive tackle. Nope. Dolphins were picking 3rd, traded up to the 3rd pick to draft Dion Jordan, who you may remember, big draft whiff, defensive end. Jordan. Eagles pick 4th, definitely the pick of the bunch. Lane Johnson, great pick. Lions 5th. Pick. Oh, by far. I mean, Lane Johnson's a great player. He's a borderline Hall of Fame player. 5th pick was the Lions. Ezekiel Ziggy Ansah, the defensive end. Yeah. No, had a couple, again, a year or two was decent, but that's kind of it. 6th pick Browns, Barkevious Mingo. Possibly one of the best names in the history of the NFL, not a particularly good player. Jonathan Cooper went to the Cardinals, a guard, never did anything. Tavon Austin went to the Rams. Yes, this was that year. D. Milliner, cornerback, went to the Jets, who absolutely did nothing. And Chance Warmack was drafted by my Titans at 10, who was, again, not very good. So that's the top 10 of the 2013 NFL draft. Maybe one of those teams, Tim, should have picked John Jenkins. That's all I'm saying. Would have at least still been in the league, whereas the majority of those players are not. As I said,
a terrible top 10.
Awful. And as I said,
there's a podcast in there. We got to go.
The entire first round
in each draft
is horrendous. But yeah, the bad top 10. John Jenkins still in the league, unlike many of those much more highly fated players. This is, though, his first season as a starter. Started all 14 games for the Silver and Black this year, so good for him. And as I mentioned, scoring that 44-yard fumble return touchdown, which I enjoyed watching so much. One last note, Tim, not only was it great to watch on the broadcast and the highlights, but someone out there set it to the Chariots of Fire music, which is just outstanding viewing to watch a 330-pound man running to Vangelis's score from that film about sprinters. Very enjoyable. So John Jenkins, Jonas Gray Player of the Week. I'm sure you enjoyed watching him run that thing into the end zone from almost half of the field.
Listen, here's the story, right? Generally speaking, when big guys pick up fumbles and are running, they should wait for a little guy to run up behind them, and they should hand the ball to the little guy almost every time. And I was actually watching, I'm trying to remember what game it was. There was another big man fumble scoop and attempt to score, but it was 65 yards, and there was no way.
Oh, it's not happening. No.
And he's run about 20 of those yards, and you could see there's this little DB just like, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball, as they're both getting tackled. It's like, no, buddy. Well, once Fat Man's got the ball, Fat Man ain't giving it to the little man. It never
The other good thing about the John Jenkins one is, like, you often see the big guys, like, they kind of blow a tire, right? They can't sprint for that far. He went straight through the tape, did not slow down. He did not get touched. And listen, we spoke about the Chargers kind of giving up. That was a play where I was like, really? No one managed to chase down a 330-pound defensive tackle? No, not so much.
Well, but speaking of being,
he took it all the way in.
Yeah, he did. And speaking of running all over people, Luke, let's transition,
good segue,
if we can, into the Buffalo Bills scored 31 points. And if you tell me the Buffalo Bills are going to score 31 points, particularly against a team supposed to be good, 10-3, the Dallas Cowboys defense has been good this year, at least reasonably good. Buffalo's going to score 31. I would have guessed. Josh Allen had him a day.
Masterpiece.
Running all over the field. He must have been throwing all over the field. Josh Allen in this game, 7 of 15. That's less than 50% completed passes for 94 yards, 6.3 yards per throw, exactly one touchdown and 1 sack. His net yards, 85. Even if you add the 24 yards rushing he accomplished on the day, only 110 yards on the docket for Josh Allen. How on Christ's name did the Bills become a running team in a week and whip beat the snot out of the Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, I think, was it 31-13
31-10
final. 31-10. Yeah, the late touchdown. Sorry, the CD Lamb sweep. I forgot about that because the game was done. So
won me a fantasy game.
And nice one. But an absolutely absurd game. I mentioned at the top, we were talking about it, right? Games looking like college games. This looked like a college blowout game where one team's just got better athletes than the other team. This is like when, Derrick Henry was at Alabama or LaDainian Tomlinson at TCU, or like pick any of these great backs in run first offenses of yesteryear, right? Earl Campbell, Barry Sanders. Like, we're going to turn around and hand the ball off to this guy every snap, and you are not going to be able to stop it. And that's what happened in this game. Buffalo won the line of scrimmage in a way that you really don't see very often between good or at least averagely good teams. Even if you're low on the Cowboys, you don't think, this wasn't the Cardinals or someone, right? You think, well, there's just nobody there. Zach Martin went out with the injury. So on the offensive line, okay, you're down a guy. But as you mentioned, the defensive line, pretty good. You got this Micah Parsons guy I've heard is pretty good. DeMarcus Lawrence, good player. This was just a savage beatdown. I mean, the line of scrimmage was moving all over the place.
5 yards downfield.
Yeah, it was absolutely ridiculous. I've rarely seen an offensive line dominate a game as much as this. And for those people who wonder how these results happen, we spoke about it on the Anatomy of a Blowout too. If you get whipped in the trenches this badly, you are going to get whipped in the game. Like, there's no way to win football games playing awful offensive and defensive line. There's none.
That's right.
You mentioned the yards per attempt for Josh Allen. I mean, the Bills in this game averaged 5.4 yards a carry on 49 carries. 49. James Cook had 25 carries. He averaged 7.2 yards per carry.
180 yards. He had twice as many rushing yards as the quarterback had passing yards.
Which is just unheard of. And especially for Buffalo, they won this time of possession in this game by 10 minutes. They ran 8 more plays, 2 of which were kneel downs. So you're telling me you only ran 8 additional plays and you had 10 more minutes of possession. It's just incredible. And it just shows commitment to the run. We've spoken about it on a few pods, right? Lots of teams say, well, we'll do it till they stop it. And they don't. The only team that I could remember bored, right? Recently, and we spoke about it on the podcast last year, was Carolina last year did this for a few weeks where they just completely stopped passing the ball with Sam Darnold, right? They just turned around. They handed it off like 45 times a game for about a month and no one knew what the hell to do. And I looked at the Bills' recent run, right? And we spoke about the firing of Ken Dorsey on a podcast a few weeks ago. Yep. I thought, interesting that this is a very big change because Buffalo's always been seen as like, you throw it too much, you make Josh Allen do too much, you need to run it more, and you never do. And in the last 4 games, which is Joe Brady's entire tenure as the new offensive coordinator, they've run it 38, 40, 28, and 49 times. And they've won 3 of those 4 games. The only one they didn't win was when the defense balked it against Philadelphia in a game really they should have won. Yep. So Joe Brady has completely changed that approach, which has been the Bills are a bit soft touch. They're a bit of a finesse team, which is weird for like, outdoor northern US teams. You tend to think as like this rugged old timey football, run it down your throat, beat the crap out of your team, lunch pail team. They've kind of been more of a pass first team for Josh Allen's tenure, and it's had great success to a degree. But they've really changed the offensive outlook to the tune of 35, 40 rushing attempts a game in the last 4 games. And the time of possession they've had in the last 4, 36, 40, 35, 35. So it's a different way of playing. I'm sure the fans are loving it because it's something new and it's getting them results. But yeah, Joe Brady flipping the script on the kind of Bills offense. And in this game, I can't remember seeing a star quarterback do as little as this and win. I saw Ryan Tannehill do it. Yeah, I saw Ryan Tannehill do this a couple of times with the Derrick Henry, playoff run where he completed, I think, 8 passes
yards.
I think Ryan Tannehill completed like 8 passes in 2 weeks or something. It was absurd, but you really rarely see a superstar quarterback doing it. Just an incredible performance by Buffalo to completely physically outmatch a Dallas squad that's supposed to be good, and a complete no-show by Dallas. But yeah, a crazily one-sided game, which looked like a college offense of we're going to run it 50 times and you cannot stop anyone in the backfield.
And you've talked a lot about the offense and how they were able to run, and it takes beating guys up in the trenches. I don't think people think of Buffalo as a tough team, right? You think about Buffalo as a finesse team. You think about Buffalo as we've joked all year that Josh Allen, the only reason they lose games is because Josh Allen gets bored and decides to throw the ball to the other team. But I'm just going to read some play charts for you. and I want you to tell me if you pick up on anything. This is the second half of the Dallas offense. Dak Prescott, pass, short right. Rush, Prescott, pass, short middle. Rush, Prescott sacked. Next, Prescott pass, short left. Prescott pass, short left. Prescott sacked. Prescott pass, short left. Prescott pass, short left. Prescott pass, short right. Prescott pass, short right. Prescott pass, short left. Prescott pass, short left, intercepted. Prescott pass, short right. Prescott pass, short left. Prescott pass, short left. Pass, short right. Pass, short right. Pass, short left. Rush, incomplete, short left. And short left. Incomplete, short right. Short middle. And then CeeDee Lamb runs for a touchdown. Like, there were 3, and I didn't say them, but there were 3 deep passes in that game attempted in the second half by Dak Prescott, down by at least 21, what was it, 20, it was 24 points the whole time.
Yep.
And the whole time they had the ball, they're down 24 points. They had 3 passes that weren't described on the play-by-play as short right, short left, or short middle. One of the interceptions was short left. Like, at some point, you have to open it up. And why didn't they? Because Buffalo's defense was in the backfield every snap. So we talk about the offensive line winning the trenches. The defensive line won the trenches. And this is a Dallas team that looked good on offense and looked okay on defense. This is not a Dallas team that's getting pushed around by everybody else in the NFL. Dak has not been running for his life all year. And in this game, it was how quick can I get rid of the ball? Because if I don't, I'm going to get sacked. And the times he held on to it, he did get sacked.
He got sacked. There was one play, Tim, where they ran it was a third down play, I think. And you think, fans of teams will watch your quarterback get sacked over and over and over and over and over again and say, why can't we change something? And what was really funny with Dallas is it literally made no difference. There was one play, they ran a 2-man route, 8 men in protection. Result of play, Prescott sacked. I was like, at that point, you just kind of almost have to give up and say, we've got 8 players protecting against, I think it was 6 rushers, and we still got sacked.
Yeah.
It was just a mauling, as you say.
No, I'm with you. And the only other thing I'll say about this game, because I think it's one of those step on your throat moments that I love so much about teams that are ahead and just absolutely, it is so frustrating when you're on the other side. Dallas opens the second half, 6 plays, 11 yards in 4 minutes. Which, first of all, what? But set that aside for a minute.
How can that happen?
Buffalo takes the ball and goes rush, 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 short pass, rush, 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 short incomplete pass, field goal. In 9 minutes, 15 plays. 9 minutes, 15 plays. It just, by the time the Cowboys got the ball back, it was the fourth quarter, and they're down by 24 points. You're like, well, that was fun.
Yeah, it was incredible to see a team stay committed to something like that. You just don't usually. We talk about it on the pod. It hasn't happened as much this year because, frankly, a lot of offenses haven't been very good. But when coordinators get bored, bad things happen.
Bad things happen.
Buffalo's coordinator did not get bored of calling run right, run left, run middle, run right, run left. Right. Don't care. Josh Allen can get all the stats he wants in other games. Today is about stop me. And if you're not going to, I guess we'll just keep doing it. And they did. It was incredible to see a team. I think really big plus if you're a Bills fan to say, like, not only have you shown you can win in a different way, which I think is a big plus because that's been a problem for that team, but also just having that mindset of like, we'll just do what it takes to win, as opposed to a lot of teams say they want to do what it takes to win, but they want to be razzle-dazzle, or they want to change their identity, or they want to do something else. This was a great, mature performance. And yeah, if the Bills can sustain it, it gives them a different way to win games. Certainly looking up and up in the Western New York area. So not a team most NFL teams, or no AFC team wants to play Buffalo in the playoffs, mainly because most of the AFC teams are crap. But still, a really interesting way to win a game. And as you say, pretty out of character.
Speaking of interesting ways to win games,
God.
What a
we spoke.
So just bear with me, all right? Because we're coming up. We're coming up on the end of the pod here. I want to touch on 2 very quick things. We love a drive chart. I'm gonna read a drive chart for a team that won the game. All right. Field goal to start. All right. Not bad. 11 plays, 59 yards, kicked a field goal.
On the
Wish
scoreboard.
you'd gotten a touchdown, but you're good with that. Field goal, punt, end of half, interception. That's how we started. Field goal, punt, interception. All right. Not good. Then 8 plays, 79 yards, touchdown. 11 plays, 63 yards, touchdown. 10 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. What? 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 It's the same game. It's not a different game. They're playing the same opponent. We went field goal, punt, interception, 3 long touchdown drives to tie the game, send it in overtime, end up kicking a field goal to win it on the Bengals have been winning some games in, I'm going to use the term creative fashion this season. A couple of really, nail biter end of game situations for them. The one big win they've had recently was against the Colts, but nail biter against Jacksonville, nail biter against Minnesota. I don't know what to make of Jake Browning and this cardiac cat thing they got going on in Cincinnati. But you go crap. Amazing to tie the game and then win the game on kind of a weirdo play on 3rd and 9. But what do you got? Anything on the Bengals and their cardiacness?
No, I mean, you hit on it. I mean, this is the least sustainable way to win a game you could ever draw up in the history of football, right? You were getting beaten quite comfortably by the Vikings, who were playing with Nick Mullins, who is not very good, for those of you who are wondering.
If he throws one less interception, they probably won.
He's
game,
fun,
but
he's not going to, starting NFL quarterback. This was very collegey, right, to what we were saying earlier. Like, I just made a chart of all of the ridiculous plays that happened towards the end of this game for both teams. I don't have the original timestamp on this, so forgive me, but this is, getting towards the end where the game just kind of went out of control because it wasn't very interesting for 3.5 quarters. You had Joe Mixon running in a 4th and goal shotgun run play where he was hit a yard in the backfield, made an incredible second effort, got in the end zone. Nick Mullins threw a touchdown to Jordan Addison on a ball that should never have been thrown, where he's rolling right near the goal line, throws it back across his body. Somehow the linebacker doesn't turn around. Jordan Addison makes a great catch. T. Higgins scored possibly the best touchdown of the season, where Jake Browning lobbed, I'm going to call it a prayer in a very generous way. It was more of a kind of man with gun to his head says, someone help play. He comes back from about 6 yards in the end zone, catches it at the 1.
At the 2, yeah, right.
Turns around, like backhands it over the goal line. It was an interception. It was a terrible throw, and it ended up being a touchdown. Then the Vikings get to the overtime. They run the tush push. They fuck it up. Then they run it again. They fuck it up again, and then they give the ball back to the Bengals. And even on the last drive, Jake Browning throws a ball into, extremely tight coverage. I'm not sure how accurate he meant it to be. Tyler Boyd makes a great catch, runs on a scram, runs away from the defense, sets up a field goal. That was just the end of the game. So, I don't know what to make of Jake Browning and the Bengals. I mean, great for them. Great work by Zach Taylor to keep the team going and competitive after the Burrow injury. But 2 things in this game that I would have thought. One is, as you mentioned, just what? And the second thing was Nick Mullins in this game. I don't want to crap on a professional football player, right? He's better than I'll ever be. All of those things are true. In this game, he threw 3 interceptions, one of which was called back, luckily, for a defensive offside because it was a pick 6 and it was a terrible throw.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The 2 other picks that he threw, possibly the most brain-dead interceptions I've seen in quite some time. One was a garden variety. You're throwing it towards the end zone. Don't put it in harm's way. It's over the middle of the field, and it's short. It landed at the goal line, and Mike Hilton managed to get his arms under it. It was actually a good play, but just mind-meltingly coach infuriating in its stupidity.
Why did you throw that ball? Yeah.
The second one is in the running for the stupidest play of the season, where he's being sacked. He's basically
by whom? By one of my favorite players in the NFL.
It was
Questenberry.
Was it?
I love Questenberry.
So he was being sacked. He's almost on the ground, and he tries to do the throwaway thing, which is stupid because it's intentional grounding because you're just throwing it to nowhere. He manages to throw it into the kind of legs of I think it was BJ Hill, right? The defensive tackle was lying on the ground, bounces off him. He catches it as an interception. I was like, Kevin O'Connell must sit there and go, I'm going to kill you. I can coach my ass off, which he's done this year, right? Cousins goes down for the year, somehow gets some games out of Josh Dobbs, somehow gets production out of Nick Mullins, or BDN as he's known. I'll let you fill in the blank there. Yes, and when he throws the interception to BJ Hill, who's lying on the ground, an inch away from his leg, you must be honest. I know coaches aren't going to punch players, but I think that's got to be up there in the running of things that may have happened.
No, only certain coaches in Jacksonville kick players. But I'm right there with you. But speaking of catching the ball while you're laying on the ground,
good.
Only thing worth talking about in that entire game, as far as I'm concerned, is the Hail Mary pass at the end in the Browns game. You've got standard garden variety. This is not one of those Hail Marys where somebody tried something neat, or you catch the ball 10 yards short and try to run
throw.
In, or
there was a Hail Mary throw, right?
Pocket over here, and you throw it to the guy over there. It was just a garden variety Hail Mary. It was a good throw right into the middle.
Put it in the air, middle of the end zone. Yep.
What does every coach tell the defense on a Hail Mary?
Knock it down.
Knock it down. Don't knock it down into the hands of the guy laying on the ground. This would have been my favorite Hail Mary ever.
Yeah.
Because he is laying on the ground. The ball hits him in the hands, and he is so shocked by this, he punches it back up into the air, and someone else knocks it back down. It was, I don't know. What are your thoughts on the almost Hail Mary that would have been incredible?
It was an incredible. I mean, the game really didn't deserve it, because another one where the Browns were kind of awful for most of this game. Mm-hmm. Joe Flacco, however, turned into Joe Montana for 10 minutes. He had 212 passing yards in the fourth quarter alone, which is the most by any Browns quarterback in any quarter in 45 years, which is kind of amazing. He's the only quarterback to throw 200 yards in the fourth quarter in any game this year. So Joe Flacco, elite. Stamp it for those who remember those fun times.
I just think it's funny that Joe Flacco and Ben Roethlisberger are two of the winningest quarterbacks in Brown Stadium since they came back and were the Browns again.
Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, the Hail Mary, the Hail Mary was, first of all, the play before was actually great. Like, Justin Fields threw it to Tyler Scott, who evaded two absolutely awful tackle attempts on the sideline, gained a bunch of extra yards to set it up. So again, hidden play, right? If it hadn't happened, he wouldn't have had the chance. Yeah, he knocked it down. Darnell Mooney's like lying on the ground. I get it. In slow motion, it looks like you should 100% catch this pass. In real time, it kind of just hits you, and you have to get lucky. Like, you just have to have your hands in the right place. It bounced off his face mask, bounced off his arm and his stomach and his legs, and then goes to the defensive back, who intercepts it. It would have been a very Brownsy way to lose the game for sure, as the banner member of the downtrodden franchise index that they are. But I did feel a bit sorry for him for then kind of getting a little bit of heat for not catching the ball. I'm like, right, it was pretty hard. There's two that it reminded me of. There's two other Hail Marys it reminded me of. There was one for the Jags. This was quite a few years ago now, and it was caught by a guy called Mike Walker, I think his name was the wide receiver.
I have no
and it was
recollection.
that exact thing happened. They launched it into the end zone. Defensive back comes up, swats it straight down, and he's literally standing there, and it lands in his hands, and they won the game. So, like, the guy just batted it down straight into his hands, and it just happened his hands were there. And he just went, oh, I've caught it. And then the game ended. And there was one in college. It's happened a couple of times in college. I think the Doug Flutie one possibly was also like this, but there was one, it was LSU, I think. I hope I'm remembering the right one. Forgive me if not, but it was Devery Henderson. Do you remember Devery Henderson, who used to play for the Saints, the super fast wide receiver, like a thin, smaller guy, played for the Breeze Saints. He caught one, I think it was against Kentucky, actually, Bluegrass Miracle, where the guy bats it down and it like bounces around, he catches it, and he runs into the end zone. So it has happened before. A game that, didn't really deserve it. Another college-y game where it's like everyone plays like crap for 3.5 quarters, then the ending's incredible, so everyone says what a fantastic game, even though it wasn't. I've already given a bit of a shout out to Joe Flacco, but I just want to say, watch the tape of the fourth quarter of this game. He is throwing some darts out there for a guy who was basically on his couch about a month and a half ago. He was throwing some darts. There's one to Marquise Goodwin, which is a perfect deep ball. There's a throw to Amari Cooper, the one that he scored on. I'm assuming you saw this player. He throws it. It's honestly one of the best throws I've seen this season by any player. It's a ridiculously good throw on a crossing route, beats the underneath defender, puts it into a minuscule window, and Amari Cooper runs up the sideline for a touchdown. It did just remind me a little bit of the Joe Flacco Super Bowl year for the Ravens, right? Joe Flacco is a very good NFL quarterback, had a great career by any normal standard, right? Like compared to the 99% of other quarterbacks, very successful, won a Super Bowl MVP. But he had the same thing that Eli Manning had, where there was just this superhero streak that came out in this one particular run. Eli had it twice, but Flacco had it in that one playoff run. And it just reminded me of that because I remember watching that Super Bowl. And then the next year, everyone's saying Joe Flacco is elite and he's going to lead the Ravens to this glory. But it turned out it was just for a certain period of time. And I loved watching a guy who's at that stage of his career just turn it on for like one quarter. It was very entertaining to watch basically an old man slinging the ball like he's 10, 15 years younger than he is. So I do just want to give Joey Flax some credit for pulling him back into this game because he made some outstanding throws towards the end of that game.
All right, we're going to end on this, Luke. Let me give you a hypothetical.
Sure.
Let's just follow me. Let's not talk about odds. Just follow me into the abyss for a moment. Joe Flacco goes on a run and pulls in Nick Foles.
I know what you're going to say.
If Flacco takes the Cleveland Browns to a Super Bowl, taking the old Browns to a Super Bowl with the Ravens, the new Browns to the Super Bowl with the Browns, wins them both, Hall of Fame quarterback?
Oh, I'd be all for it. 100%.
You have to, right? If he wins one for the Browns?
If he comes off the couch at, 38, I think he is, right? Wins the Super Bowl.
Fired by everybody.
Was backup for the Jets last year. Like, it was,
played in week 1. He was the starter.
A guy that genuinely most people will have thought had retired, right? Like the casual NFL fan will think, oh, this guy's retired. He must have retired like 5 years ago. Still around. If he takes, to your point, great point, on both Browns franchises, taking them both to Super Bowls, and it would be the Browns' first championship since 1960-ish time. Is when Jim Brown was still playing, I think. Otto Graham Brown. Yeah. It's the first Super Bowl. They've never even appeared in a Super Bowl. If Joe Flacco leads them to a Super Bowl championship this year, I will be the first person waiting in Canton to clap him into the Hall of Fame for that achievement because it would be incredible. I've got a follow-up for you, Tim. How about this? I'll give you a follow-up.
Okay.
Again, I don't want odds on it. If Joe Flacco leads the Cleveland Browns to a Super Bowl championship in the year of our Lord 2023 to 2024, right? And says, I'm not retiring, right? Assuming he doesn't want to go out on time. He should. I'm available. Does he come back as the week 1 starter for the Browns next year?
Yes.
Book it.
Yes. It's not even, and I just want now.
Imagine Deshaun. Sorry, can I just say? Can you imagine Deshaun Watson, $250 million fully guaranteed contract, being benched in 2024 for Joe Flacco? It would be the single funniest thing that's probably ever happened in the NFL. Listen. The Titans suck. I've got no dog in the race. I've got no horse in the race. Let's get Browns Super Bowl with Joe Flacco throwing for 400 yards and beating the 49ers in the Super Bowl. I would laugh my head off.
If the Cleveland Browns qualify to go to the Super Bowl, you and I are going on my dime. We're going to get we're going to get Flacco Browns jerseys and we're going to go rock it out. Can you imagine?
I really hope that happens.
AFC
and if it
Central
does,
for the win.
And if it AFC Central pride, and if that does happen, listener, you will hear about it first. Not first. You'll hear about it.
No, we will live stream the crap out of that. Yeah,
on the half yard line. We thank you for joining us today. It has been a wild and wacky week 15. We are about to go and watch the remainder of Monday Night Football as we record this. If you wonder why we didn't talk about, what a crazy game between the Eagles and the Seahawks, that was why. We hope that you will join us in the future podcasts that are out there. You can find us on your podcast app. Half Yard Line Podcast. Just look it up. You'll find us. Hit us with a like, hit us with a subscribe, rate and review the pod. Super helpful. You can find us on YouTube at Half Yard Line Pod. You can find us on every social network apart from Snapchat, apparently, at Half Yard Line Pod as well. You can email us, halfyardlinepod@gmail.com. We thank you for joining us. We look forward to the next one. For now, it is peace out.
Bye-bye.